Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahushai, Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahushai. Call Allah Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Barakah, Quadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well through the Spirit. Almighty Shalom to the hopeful elect that are scattered four corners of the earth, teaching this word and believing this word, Lord willing, as a whole, that y'all continue in sound doctrine and in the same spirit. Shalom to the Akwath that are believers of this faith and this truth. Lord willing, that you continue to pursue your lot, which is being a loving and silent and virtuous wife. And Lord willing, the Most have mercy on the other brothers and sisters that's not in the faith. We're about to tap into Galatians, the 5th chapter. I know a lot of people that come and try to debunk or go against the actual truth. It just all goes back to, being in a deep sleep and going back to, spiritually being dead. And when we look, especially in the New Testament, the apostles and those that were Israelites understood that the law, statute, commandments, the covenant, the everlasting covenant was only for the Israelites. But we see that some of the men, women, and others of the nation of Israel didn't believe in Yahushua. We're in a time now where Jake would think all nations can be saved and be delivered. And it all just stems back from being spiritually dead, not having this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Then the Lord, allowed us to have that breath of life, the late 1960s to 1970, all the way to 2025, which, if we was to accumulate time frame, maybe 55 to 56 years of this truth actually being on the earth in this time. So Lord willing, this is edifying, and we can get some closure and deal with certain points in Galatians, the 5th chapter, in verse 1. So this is Galatians chapter 5 in verse 1. Just for edification, I'll read it in the KJV and in the NLT. Lord willing, you can follow along, right? It says, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty, which is freedom, wherewith Hamashiach hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. In the NLT, so Hamashiach has truly set us free. Now make sure that you stay free. Don't get tied up again in slavery to the law. Now, when we deal with the point in the KJV where it says, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty, liberty refers to the freedom Yahushai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, has given to the elect. Freedom from the curse of the law, not the law itself, right? So this liberty is a spiritual liberty. Freedom from the traditions and doctrines of men like the Pharisees, right? Excessive rituals and freedom from being under the penalty of the law due to sin, right? And I think we're going to keep flipping back to the Galatians. So what I'll do is I'll use my other Bible app and get the side precepts that I want for different points. So we're going to go to the book of Romans, the 8th chapter, in verse 2. It says, for the law of the spirit of life in Hamashiach Yahushai have made me free from the law of sin and death, right? In St. John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, right? So we have to understand, for the law of the spirit of life in Hamashiach Yahushai have made us free from the law of sin and death, right? Yahushai is the truth that is going to set us free. This is why, again, Yahushai is the key, and through the flesh, especially when, Jake, we know that we're about to sin, the wages of sin is death, right? And if you're willfully sinning, right, you're persistently going off, right? The law is life. Let's actually just click this. Let's see different points it gives. 2nd Ezra 3:7, it says, unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointed death in him, and in his generation, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number, right? So really because of the sin, now we die. And especially when we look at the penalty, certain things that we have committed, you will be put to death, you'll be stoned. And because of Yahweh Shai, look at all these LGBT community, right? Same sex. Us that might have committed adultery, let me not say might, that actually have committed adultery, we're supposed to be put to death. But because of what Yahweh Shai did for us, right? That's that mercy of Yahweh Shem Shai. 2nd Ezra chapter 9, verse 37, notwithstanding the law perisheth not, but remaineth in his force. Baruch 3 and 9. Hear, Israel, the commandment of life. Give ear to understand wisdom. Right? The commandment is of life. Right? And who is life? Yahweh Shai. Right? Because again, Yahweh Shai actually did the law. So when we say we don't need to do the law, right? It's all about us thinking about being justified by the works of the law, by what we do by the letter, right? We couldn't even fulfill it back then. So now that Yahweh Shai come into play, we're justified by faith. But even with that faith, if you truly fear the Lord, like we say we do, right? You're supposed to be terrified and have respect for the Lord, because all these words is from the heavens. The law, that was from the heavens. So we want to do the most and the best that we can. This is why brothers, use the Judges 5 and 11, right? Rehearse the righteous acts, right? So going back to this verse, Galatians 5 and 1, where it says, wherewith Hamashiach have made us free, right? This is going into Yahweh Shai's sacrifice, freed the elect, because it's really the elect on this side. The 2/3 is not taking heed to this truth, right? The 2/3 is not fully believing in Yahweh Shai and taking the time to master their sword, which is this word, right? And again, Yahweh Shai's sacrifice freed the elect from having to keep the law perfectly to be justified, which is impossible in the flesh. It's impossible for us to keep the law perfect, right? But one thing we should be keeping perfect is the doctrine. If the Spirit of the Lord is in you, can't no lie be of the truth, right? We're going to constantly sharpen ourselves, and constantly, if we don't know something, we're going to dwell around brothers that can actually give us understanding and constantly help us grow, right? So again, this emphasized that faith in Yahweh Shai is what brings justification, which I said, faith justifies us, not the Levitical sacrificial system or relying on carnal ordinances. That's why when we see in Hebrews, the 10th chapter, this thing was a foreshadow of things to come. Yahweh Shai is the new high priest, which we go to Hebrews, the 7th chapter, and under the new covenant, we are under grace, but not lawlessness, right? That grace is that favor, right? This is why certain things we might not be able to fulfill being in this captivity, but we still try to do the best that we can, let alone with faith in the Lord. You call on the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shai, help me with this. Yahweh Shem Shai, certain things that, that's hard for us to fully keep. We want to call on Yahweh Shem Shai, Lord willing, make it easier for us. But then sometimes, hey, like when it comes to the Shabbat, I'm doing the lunar Shabbat, I might not be able to have off on every Shabbat. Like this Thursday that's coming out, I'm gonna be going to work, but I'm gonna be getting out of work early. But I'm still gonna be working on the Shabbat, even though we should be keeping the Shabbat to the best of our ability by being under the grace of Yahweh Shai, and he already understand the captivity that we're under. I don't have the power or the confidence in Esau to say, hey, look, I'm a Jew, I'm an Israelite, we keep these customs, the Shabbat comes every month and it changes, so can you work around the schedule? I can't put faith in them. Hours gonna be short and I gotta provide, right? We do the best that we can, but you wanna make sure that you exceed in faith in Hamashiach Yahushai. So let's go to Romans, the 3rd chapter. The Lord willing, this is all making sense, right? Romans 3:28. Let me start at 26. It says, to declare, I say at this time, his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Yahushai. Hey, believing in Yahushai, this is about faith. Where is boasting then? It is excluded. By what law or works? Nay, but by the law of faith, right? The law of faith. Therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Right now, for you simpletons, from just that verse, that does not mean you do not have to do the law. Clearly and plainly, right? It says, therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law, right? The measure of your faith. We see in Romans 2:14 that some of the Gentiles was following the law without even being taught. So imagine if they was in this thing believing in Yahushai and they're actually following the law without even being taught. Don't even know that they're even following it. But their faith is overseeding for us to be like, yo, this man wearing fringes, he's doing this and he's doing that. Because it's not about the outer appearance. It's not about how a man show that he's doing the letter, but his faith is being seen, because your faith is going to draw your actions, right? For Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Right, when we go back to Galatians 5, when we go to the point starting right here, be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. In the NLT, don't get tied up again in slavery to the law. Right, so the yoke of bondage is going back into trying to be justified by the old law. I can't, just because I'm trying to rehearse the law, I'm trying to establish it, I'm teaching, hey, establish the law, hey, do the best that you can, right? I'm not teaching brothers or sisters or myself that I can be justified, or we can be justified by the old law, especially animal sacrifices and circumcision as mean as of righteousness, right? This is why, again, when I look at the elder apostles and the men of Great Millstone, they rebuke other camps and even individuals that's not in camp, you know, that say Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, they believe this, or they making videos. They rebuke that teach the law is what saves you, especially if they minimize Yahushai's role. Yahushai is the key to this whole message. Without him, this ministry is nothing, right? And you got to understand, Paul was speaking against Israelites in Galatia who were being misled by the circumcision, which is the those that were of the circumcision. Like we could use Pharisees as an example, right? Law, just like how men on this side, law, to rely on the law instead of Yahushai. We're supposed to rely on Hamashiach Yahushai. This is why when we see how the apostles, they was willing to be in jail, to suffer persecution, affliction, right? Beheaded for this truth, right? And that goes with having faith in Yahushai and putting Yahushai first, because he's the mediator. The law is not the mediator, right? The law was for us to establish us establishing righteous acts within ourselves and within our house, within our communities. But really, we should be establishing faith. Like when Apostle the other day was going into, you know, when you're building up a sheep in this thing, build them up in the nationality, the names of the Father, the Son, and the Rakak Wadash, and the law, statutes, and commandments, right? Because the key, you have to have the name of the Father if you're walking in this truth. You have to believe that you're a Hebrew Israelite, because it could be somebody doing the law and they don't believe they're Israelite. It could be somebody that's doing the law and they believe everybody can get saved, or the Lord is dealing with every nation the same as Israel, that where they're going to have the Spirit, they're going to have glorified bodies, right? Then they really don't have faith in the Lord, because truly, like Hebrews, what is it, the 5th chapter, you must be taught again. I think it's Hebrews 5:12, we must be taught again. But this is Acts 15 and verse 10. I'll start at verse 8. It says, "And the Most High, which knoweth the hearts, bear them witness, giving them the Rakakwadash, even as he did unto us." Right? And which is the Gentiles, right? That even got a taste of the Rakakwadash. Even when we go back to Acts the 10th chapter, when Peter was teaching Cornelius and the other Gentiles, and the Spirit of the Lord fell upon them too. It says, verse 9, "And put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith." There's no difference between the Jew and the Greeks. When we look at Zechariah 12 and 7, Judah is going to be saved first, right? When we look at Jew, Jew is short for Judah. But what other tribes was, cleaving to Judah was Benjamin and Levi. So they were taught too. But then majority, I'm using majority because, synonymous with 2/3, majority of the Israelites didn't believe in Yahushua. They rejected him. And that was like a fulfillment of Psalms 118, verse 22. So then later on, this gospel was going to be taught to the Gentiles, the dispersed and scattered Israelites that didn't even hear of this truth of Yahushua. And some of them cleaved to the faith. And the Gentile teaching started in the time of Paul, but really started with Peter in Acts 10th chapter. But it was all to lead to where we at now. Because to fulfill Revelations, the 11th chapter, verse 7, all the way to like 10, we didn't have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. We were spiritually dead, right? So then the Lord put that spirit back out, and now we being taught this thing all over again. But before this truth came out, all Jake that came on the side were moving and thinking like heathens. We were the Gentiles in this time. All Jake was born and raised as a Gentile, not having the true knowledge, right? So verse 10, it says, "Now therefore, why tempt ye the Most High to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear?" Right? Again, now therefore, why tempt ye the Most High to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? Going back to Galatians, the 5th chapter, verse 3, where that point where it says, "Be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." And the yoke of bondage is going back into trying to be justified by the old law, especially animal sacrifices and circumcision, which means of righteousness, right? So again, Paul was speaking against Israelites in Galatia who was being misled by the circumcision Israelites or the circumcision Jews to rely on the law instead of Yahushua, right? Let's get Colossians 2 and 14. Colossians 2 and 14. 2 and 14, it says, "Blotting out the handwriting of ordinance that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross." Right? That letter, the law, right? Especially, what was the sacrifice? What was we doing with the sacrifice? You commit yearly, we would do a sacrifice, right? Let me just go to that point in Hebrews 10. Because what Yahushua did was all a foreshadow of the things to come. Right, let me see. Hebrews 10 and 1. It says, "For the law having a shadow of things," for the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offer year by year continually, make the comers thereunto perfect. Right? There's certain sins that we were committing, we would have to have a sacrifice, right, to cleanse or to perfect us. But these things Those sacrifices of old was not perfecting us. We had to keep sacrificing yearly. If Yahweh Shai didn't lay himself on the cross, we would still having to do it right now. Of course, we don't got the temple, but the Lord made all these things happen to bring forth Yahweh Shai. Because the temple now is the ministry. The temple now is the elect. So the laws of sacrifice, 1 Ezra 7-8. 12 goats for the sin of all Israel, according to the number of the chief of the tribe of Israel. Right? We were getting goats for the sins we committed. Right? Acts 13:39. And by him, all that believe are justified for all things, for which we could not be justified by the law of Moses. Right? So all this, us believing in Yahweh Shai, we're going to be made justified. Because back then, us sacrificing, we were not justified. Right? We already read Acts 15:10. Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink, or respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days. Right? Because it all goes back to Yahweh Shai. To Yahweh Shai. When you think about it, the Pharisees, if they was in the old, still thinking of the old law, and Yahweh Shai was on the scene, they didn't believe that they're made perfect in faith in Yahweh Shai. They had to have the mindset that we still have to keep the old ways, the same traditions of old. Right? Let me see if we can get another one. Galatians 3:17. In this I say that the covenant that was conformed before the Most High in Hamashiach, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. Let's even get that Galatians 3:17 in the NLT. Galatians chapter 3, verse 17. This is what I am trying to say. The agreement the Most High made with Abraham cannot be canceled 430 years later. When the Most High gave the law to Moses, the Most High will be breaking his promise. For if the inheritance could be received by keeping the law, then it would not be the result of accepting the Most High's promise. But the Most High graciously gave it to Abraham as a promise. Why then was the law given? It was given alongside the promise to show people their sins. But the law was designed to last only until the coming of the child who was promised. The Most High gave his law through angels to Moses, who was the mediator between the Most High and the people. Now, who is the mediator between Yahweh and the people? Yahweh Shai. And again, he is the mediator of the new covenant. Right? He is that sacrifice, that blood of or for the new covenant that was sprinkled. Right? Verse 20, it says, now a mediator is helpful if more than one party must reach to an agreement. But the Most High, who is one, did not use a mediator when he gave his promise to Abraham. He didn't use a mediator. Right? Verse 21, is there a conflict then between the Most High's law and the Most High's promises? Absolutely not. If the law could give us new life, we could be made right with the Most High by obeying it. We get a new life in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Right? But the scriptures declare that we are all prisoners of sin. So we receive the Most High promise of freedom only by believing in Yahweh Shai Hamashiach. We're prisoners of sin. Wait, what does that mean? You're going to go off. You're going to slip because you're in this veiled body. The Lord already knew the system. This is why Yahweh Shai is the first creation to bring forth this system now. That all of this is going to lay on Yahweh Shai. Because we can't master this on our own. I can't keep the law. I cannot be fully righteous on my own. I have to be righteous in the Lord through my faith. Right? Because with your faith, you're going to fear the Lord to do the best that you can. But it's your faith in Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Verse 23, before the way of faith in Hamashiach was available to us, We were placed under guard by the law. We were kept in protective custody, so to speak, until the way of faith was revealed. It had to be revealed. This is why Yahushua came into place. This is why when we go back to Hebrews, we'll understand Abraham had faith. When the Lord told him to leave his family, his land, then even more, he showed faith when the Lord asked him to sacrifice his son. Because Abraham even believed that Yahweh can raise his son up from the dead through the Spirit, which Yahushua was the full act or the full fulfillment of that. It says, let me put it in another way. The law was our guardian until Hamashiach came. It protected us until we could be made right with the Most High through faith, right? It was the law was our guardian to know what sin is, what not to do, what we should do, right? And us being in the flesh, right? Those that are of the faith, we try to do the best that we can. But because we're in the flesh, your mind, you can have a plague in the mind, right? Shoot, you could be working and lose track of time, and then hey, guess what? You working on the Shabbat, you cooking on the Shabbat, right? But we want to give it all back to Yahweh through Yahushai. And the more you grow in this faith, the more you're going to try to examine yourself to be better and better and better. Let alone, we're going to be praying unto the Lord. We're going to be asking the Lord to move certain things around so we can be able to do this and to be able to do that. But we know we will not be able to master the law in this flesh. We want to master our faith, right? When you go to Revelations 14 and 12, KJV, NLT, you want to maintain your faith in Yahushai, but you want to keep the commandments. You want to keep the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh. Literally, you want to have those in your mind that what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Verse 25, and now that the way of faith has come, we no longer need the law as our guardian. Because Yahushua is our true guardian. This does not mean don't establish the law. Paul said in Romans, the 3rd chapter, verse 31, right? Do we abolish the law? God forbid. We establish the law. For you are all children of the Most High through faith in Hamashiach Yahushai, right? The true children of the Lord have faith in Yahushai. Those that are predestined, they believe in Yahushai. We got this flesh body, let alone when we go to Ecclesiastes, the 1st chapter, those things before, especially if you are of the elect men, the firstborn, right? The first fruits, right? You was with Yahushai. But coming down, being in this flesh, the Lord as a punishment took that away from us. Right, verse 27, and all who have been united with Hamashiach in baptism, right, true baptism is by the word, right? What John did was a foreshadow of things to come. Yahushua baptizing with fire and water, right? And that true baptism is the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, which are being taught, right? That's how we get cleansed. If we didn't have the knowledge for 350 plus years, how you gonna get it back? By being taught. Romans 10, right? How you gonna believe unless a preacher was sent or a pastor or a prophet was sent, right? So like putting on new clothes, there is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, for you are all one in Hamashiach Yahushai. Now you gotta understand the Greek captivity, because even Paul and the other apostles, they know who the Israelites is. They understand, because even Paul, growing in his faith, he understands what happened to the Israelites during this history and that history. We see in the Old Testament, all the Israelites is spoken by name. Even the nations is. But when it deals with Yahushua coming to play, building up knowledge, he always speak about the children of Israel by name, right? But the other nations is not spoken by name, because the Lord is not dealing with them when it pertains to wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, or being baptized. So when it says neither Jew or Gentile, Jew first as in Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, Gentiles as the dispersed Israelites, which is the other Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and the so-called Northern Kingdom, right? The Latinos, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which truly the Northern Kingdom didn't get this gospel fully, right? Verse 29, it says, and now that you belong to Mashiach, you are the true children of Abraham. You are his heirs, And the Most High's promise to Abraham belongs to you, because like father like son, or son like father, we're going to imitate our father. Abraham had faith in the Lord. That's the point. So the true children of Abraham has faith in Yahweh Shai. They have faith in Yahweh Shem Shai. They have faith in what the Lord wants to do. Like Noah wasn't bickering. He was, oh, you want me to build this? How you want me to build it? He took that. Abraham, he left from the land of Ur to go all the way to a land that he don't know nothing about. That's pure faith. Willing to give up his where he asked the Lord, I need an heir. I don't have an heir. He was willing to sacrifice his son. What is that? That is faith. 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 So the real children of Abraham is those of faith. So going back to Galatians 5:1, in the KJV, stand fast therefore in the liberty wherewith Hamashiach have made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Right? So just to, close out, right? This is to hold firmly to the spiritual freedom that Yahweh Shai gave us, not to fall back into carnal justification by the law, by us to try to solidify our own righteousness by what we do in the law. Oh man, I'm doing this. Man, I do everything right. What did the rich man say? He said, man, I keep that law. I keep this law. So how can I obtain salvation? The Lord said, okay, give everything you have to the poor. He couldn't do that. Right? And that even goes with the Matthew, the 13th chapter, verse 44 down. Right? This truth is hidden treasure. You got to be willing to give everything up for it. Right? When we go into Romans, what is it? Romans, the 12th chapter, verse 2, KJV, NLT, you want to have a changed mind. Don't follow the behaviors of the world, but allow the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shai, to transform your mind, the way of thinking. We're supposed to be submissive for the Lord and do what he wants us to do to actually really benefit in this thing. And that's truly to have faith in Yahweh Shai and fear him. Because the more fear you got, the more you're going to do things that's pleasing unto the Lord and not really fulfill the things of the flesh. Right? The more we learn, we like, man, this is not living. Right? You're not trying to be the things of the world, because what your oppressors push is taking you away from Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Right? And again, the law is holy, Romans 7:12. Right? So we should strive to keep it to the best of our ability. Try to keep the law to the best of your ability. Try to keep the law to the best of your ability. We see in Sirach chapter 2 that if we do things that's pleasing unto him, we're going to be filled with the law naturally, right? But we are not saved by the law, right? We are saved by grace through Yahweh Shai, who is the only way to the Father. St. John 14:6. And really, this really makes it even more fire, because the elect is predestined to get it. Right? So the elect truly ain't predestined because of the law. They're predestined because Yahweh Shai knew that the elect really are going to believe in him, because they're the elect. Right? Lord willing, this is edifying, straight to the point. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, B'Shem Rakakodash, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who rule well and teach well through the Spirit. And a mighty shalom to the hopeful elect in the same Spirit. Lord willing, that y'all all continue to endure and be sincere. Shalom to the Akwakim, believers of this faith and this truth. And with that, shalom, ball.